The moment I saw the empty space on my porch where the package should have been, I knew something was off. It wasn't the first time something disappeared in this neighborhood, but this time I had proof. 3 days earlier, I'd been tracking a replacement part for my motorcycle's clutch lever, custom-made and definitely not cheap. I'd waited weeks for it. The courier marked it delivered, complete with a photo, and there it was clear as day sitting right on my welcome mat at 2:36 p.m. But when I got home at 3:10 p.m., gone. Now here's the thing, I'm not paranoid, but I've had run-ins with the HOA board before. Especially Karen Whitmore, the board president, middle-aged, sharp-voiced, and always acting like she owns the whole street. Last month, she fined me for visible tools when I left a wrench on my porch for 10 minutes. A week before that, she threatened to report me for excessive noise because I started my motorcycle at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Yeah, Karen and I, not exactly brunch buddies. So when the package vanished, I checked the footage from the Ring cam I installed last month thanks to Karen's nonsense. And there she was. Karen, in her ugly pink shawl and oversized sunglasses, strutting up my driveway like she was collecting rent. She paused, looked around, and then snatched the box. She didn't even hesitate. I rewound the footage 3 times to be sure. It was her. I could even hear her mutter, "Not approved for exterior accessories," as she walked off with it. 3 words ran through my head. She is toast. I called the courier company first. "Hi, this is Keaton Niles. I had a delivery marked complete today and I have video proof of someone stealing it, someone from my HOA. The guy on the line, Joseph, got real quiet after I told him I had footage. "We take theft seriously, sir." "Do you have the video available?" "Already uploaded it," I said. "Send it to your claims department and attach the police report I just filed." Joseph whistled. "You filed a report already?" "Darn right I did." I wasn't waiting for justice. I was dragging it to their front lawn and ringing the bell, but I didn't stop there. I printed screenshots of the footage. Full color. Karen's face was unmistakable. I walked the neighborhood and posted them on every community bulletin board and mailbox kiosk, right under the HOA's ridiculous "keep your grass under 2 inches" flyers. I added one line. HOA President Karen Whitmore caught stealing residents' property. Video available. Ask me? By sunset, I'd had 6 neighbors knock on my door. 3 of them had also lost packages in the past 6 months. One guy, Ron, said he lost a set of golf clubs last week, delivered, then gone. I showed every single one of them the footage. By the next morning, the whole street was buzzing. Karen still hadn't said a word. But her car was missing from her driveway, probably hiding at her sister's over in Belmont. The HOA called an emergency board meeting for that evening, and guess who was front row? Me, holding a USB stick in one hand and a copy of the police report in the other. The community center was packed tighter than a rush-hour subway. Folding chairs scraped against the tile as more neighbors filed in, whispering in low tones and glancing toward the front of the room where the HOA board sat stone-faced behind a long table. Karen's seat was vacant. The other 4 board members, Dale, Marcy, Linda, and Rick, looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. A few avoided my eyes entirely. I didn't wait for the formalities. The moment they opened the floor, I stood, walked to the podium, inserted the USB drive, and projected the footage onto the pull-down screen. The whole room went still. There was Karen, clear as daylight, bending down on my porch and snatching the package like it was her Amazon return. A few gasps echoed. One woman near the back covered her mouth. When the clip ended, I stepped away from the podium. "I've already filed a police report. The Courier has the footage. The claim's under review. And yes, I've retained legal counsel. This wasn't random. It was targeted." I turned toward the board. "I want to know how many of you knew." Rick cleared his throat. "We had no knowledge of this, Mr. Niles. This is the first we're hearing of it." "Funny," I said, "because the day after my package vanished, Linda here left a note on my door about non-compliant porch modifications. You expect me to believe that's a coincidence?" Linda's lips parted, but nothing came out. Marcy looked at her lap. We've had complaints about clutter. Clutter, I said. You're calling a sealed box clutter? Or is that just HOA code for whatever Karen doesn't like? The murmuring in the room got louder. Dale raised his hand like a substitute teacher trying to rein in a rowdy class. Let's keep this civil. No, said Ron from the second row. Civil ended when my golf clubs vanished and your president decided to go shopping on our porches. People started nodding. I noticed Mr. Patel, who rarely said a word at these meetings, stand up. My daughter's birthday present disappeared last month. I thought it was porch pirates. Now I'm not so sure. The board tried to regain control, but it was already slipping through their fingers. I turned back to the front. I've spoken with Officer Ramirez at the precinct. He's forwarding this to the DA. If this turns into a felony charge, and it might, depending on value, you'll want to ask yourselves how much you're willing to cover for her. Rick leaned forward. Let's not jump to conclusions, she took it, I said flatly. On video, that's not a conclusion. That's a fact. Someone clapped, then a few more. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Rick banged a gavel like we were in a courtroom. We're suspending the meeting until further notice. This will be investigated internally. I crossed my arms, like the last time. When my neighbor's fence was torn down without notice and the complaint disappeared from the minutes, Marcy stood up. That was a misunderstanding. No, said Abigail from the garden club, rising from her seat. That was a cover-up, and we all know it. Rick's voice rose. This is not the time for conspiracy theories. Then make it the time for answers, I said. Because if the board refuses to act, we'll take this to the city oversight office. That shut them up. The HOA wasn't just a neighborhood club, it had legal responsibilities under municipal statutes. And the city didn't take kindly to neighborhood boards behaving like warlords. After the meeting dissolved, about a dozen neighbors followed me into the parking lot. Ron handed me a flash drive. My camera caught her walking toward your place that day. Different angle. Thought you might want it. Perfect, I said. I'll include it in the evidence packet. Mrs. Wu approached next, holding a folder. I printed my delivery records for the last 6 months, 4 missing packages. Never reported them because I didn't think anyone would believe me. You're not alone, I said. I'm compiling everything. The more we have, the harder it'll be for them to spin it. By the next morning, I'd already spoken to the assistant district attorney. She was blunt. If your HOA president is stealing packages from porches, that's not just theft. That could be mail tampering. Depending on what was inside, it might rise to federal charges. She asked for the footage, the witness statements, and any documentation I had. I sent everything. By noon, Karen was served with a subpoena. Later that week, I got a call from a local news station. Someone had tipped them off. I had a good guess who. The reporter wanted an interview. I agreed as long as they didn't blur the footage. The story aired that Friday evening. Neighborhood HOA president caught on camera stealing packages, ran across the bottom of the screen while they played the footage like it was a surveillance sting. The fallout was instant. By Saturday morning, the neighborhood was split into 2 camps: those who wanted the whole board dissolved, and those demanding only Karen's resignation. But one thing was certain. No one was defending her. Her house was quiet. No car in the driveway. A few neighbors said she'd gone to stay with her brother out of state. I didn't care where she went. I was more focused on what came next. Rick called an emergency session, this time without Karen. About 30 residents showed up. The energy in the room felt different, focused, determined. Rick looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. We've received notice from the city. They're launching a formal inquiry, and we've been advised to conduct a full audit of HOA operations. Dale, usually the bulldog of the group, had his arms crossed and didn't say a word. I raised my hand. Will that audit include a review of all fines issued in the last year? Because I've got records showing a pattern of targeting specific homeowners, including me, for infractions that aren't in the bylaws. Rick nodded slowly. Yes, everything. We're bringing in an outside firm. "And will you make the findings public?" I asked. Marcy looked up. "They'll be posted on the HOA's website and delivered with the next newsletter." That was new. Transparency hadn't exactly been their brand. As I left the meeting, I passed by Linda standing near the door. She didn't look up. "You had a chance to speak up," I said. "You still do," she hesitated. "I didn't know she was doing that, but you knew something was off." She didn't deny it. I walked away. The following week, the city posted a notice on the HOA bulletin board. A formal hearing was scheduled in 3 weeks regarding multiple code violations, possible misuse of funds, and failure to disclose conflicts of interest. It was more than I'd hoped for, but I wasn't done. I filed a petition with signatures from over 40 residents to recall the entire board. According to our bylaws, it only took 30% of homeowners to trigger a vote. We had double that when the board got the paperwork. They didn't even try to fight it. The vote was set. In 1 month, we'd decide whether to clean house entirely. And judging by the mood of the neighborhood, it wasn't going to be close. 3 mornings after the recall petition was officially filed, I was sitting on my porch, coffee in one hand, notebook in the other, when a city code enforcement vehicle pulled up to Karen's house. A woman in a navy blazer stepped out, clipboard under her arm, followed by a man holding a laser measuring tool. They didn't knock. They walked the perimeter, eyeing the yard, the eaves, the fence line. I didn't need to guess what they were doing. I'd submitted a formal complaint to the city's Neighborhood Governance Oversight Division 2 weeks prior. Not just about the theft, but the board's pattern of improper citations, unlicensed alterations to common property, and most damning, a secret slush fund buried in the budget line as seasonal maintenance. It didn't take long for the city to realize something didn't smell right. An hour later, the same vehicle pulled into the HOA community office behind the pool house. This time they knocked. I followed at a distance. As I approached, I heard the woman say, "This structure was expanded without proper permit filings. Where are the blueprints?" Rick opened the door wider. "We didn't renovate anything. That deck was always here." The man with the measuring tool raised an eyebrow. "That's not what the satellite records show." I didn't say a word. I just kept walking past, but I saw Rick's hand tremble slightly as he signed the inspection form. Later that night, I met with a few neighbors in my garage. Not a formal meeting, just the kind where folks bring folding chairs and thermoses and talk like something serious is about to change. Abigail opened her folder and laid out a stack of documents. "These are the minutes from the last 2 years," she said. "I asked for them 3 times. They finally sent them yesterday." I flipped through. The formatting was sloppy. Some months missing altogether. Notes about budget approvals had no votes recorded, and one entry in particular stood out. "Right here," I said. "They voted to allocate funds for perimeter beautification, but the total doesn't match what was spent." I remember because I saw the invoice from the landscaping company. Only $2,000. They list 5 here. Ron leaned forward. "Where'd the rest go?" Abigail answered. "That's the other thing. I talked to the landscaper. He said he only did 1 job all year. Everything else was handled internally." "Internally," I repeated. "You mean volunteers?" He said board members handled it themselves. But he refused to say more, which meant they'd pocketed the difference. Or at the very least, used HOA funds for personal projects and wrote it off as community improvement. If theft of property hadn't been enough to make the city act, embezzlement would crack the whole board wide open. The next afternoon, I drove to the county records office. It was time to see what else they'd buried. The clerk pulled up the HOA's filings for the last 5 years. I asked for copies of every submitted annual budget, along with the accompanying receipts. As I reviewed them, 2 things became clear. First, the board had been self-approving expenditures without community votes. Second, the numbers didn't add up. One file listed an architectural consultant paid nearly $4,000. But when I called the number listed, the man who answered said he hadn't worked for any HOA in years and certainly not ours. "This is the 3rd call I've had this week," he said. Sounds like someone's using my name. I hung up and immediately dialed the municipal fraud hotline. The investigator who picked up was no nonsense. I gave her the details, offered to send the documents, and told her I'd already filed a police report for the stolen package. "You're the resident with the porch video?" she asked. "We heard about that. Channel 7 aired it. That's me. I'll escalate this to our financial crimes division. Don't destroy anything. We'll likely subpoena the board's records." By the time the recall vote day arrived, the community center looked like election night. Tables set up with ballots, volunteers checking IDs, neighbors whispering in tense clusters. There were almost no signs of support for the board. Even Dale, who used to bark down dissent like a high school principal, avoided eye contact. I cast my vote and walked outside. Across the street, a Channel 7 van was parked, camera crew loading gear. The reporter from the first segment spotted me. "We might need a follow-up," she said. "Word is the city's pressing charges." I didn't respond. I just looked across the lot where a sheriff's cruiser had just pulled in. Two officers stepped out carrying folders. One of them looked familiar, Detective Harrow, who'd handled a zoning case I helped with years ago when I worked as a paralegal. He spotted me. "Niles," he said, "looks like you stirred up something big." "Just shined a light," I said. "They brought the roaches." He nodded toward the building. "We've got warrants for financial records, digital correspondence, and internal communications. If they were texting about anything shady, we'll find it." Inside, the vote tallying was wrapping up. As people emerged, a low buzz turned into a cheer. The final count wasn't even close, 87% in favor of a full board removal. Rick tried to slip out the side door, but one of the officers intercepted him. "Hold up," Harrow said. "We've got some questions." I didn't stay to watch the rest. I had everything I needed. The next week, an interim committee of residents was formed, 7 volunteers selected by the most recent community-wide vote. I was one of them. Our first act: freeze all spending, contact a certified public accountant, and contract an independent legal firm to comb through the HOA's last 5 years of operations. The results were worse than we expected: over $20,000 in unaccounted funds. At least 9 fake invoices. Unauthorized use of HOA credit cards for personal purchases, including a payment to a boutique dog grooming service over an hour away. And hidden in the digital records: emails between Karen and Marcy discussing how to keep Niles quiet and ways to delay audits. I forwarded everything to Detective Harrow. Within a month, formal charges were filed. Karen faced felony counts of theft, mail tampering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Rick and Linda were charged with financial mismanagement and obstruction. Marcy's name was listed in the conspiracy charge, tied to the fake invoices. Dale got lucky. He was fined for negligence, but avoided criminal charges due to lack of direct involvement. The new committee voted to open all HOA meetings to the public, live stream them, and post all documentation online in a searchable archive. No more backroom decisions. No more mystery fines. As for the package, the courier company reimbursed me, but that part didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that the entire neighborhood saw what happened when you push back with evidence, with patience, and with the law on your side. For the first time in years, people started talking to each other again. Not just about bylaws or fences, but about community gardens, block parties, and fixing up the old playground at the end of the street. The fear was gone, and Karen, she pled guilty. Took a deal to avoid prison, but paid restitution and was barred from serving on any HOA board in the county for life. Justice wasn't just served. It was etched into the neighborhood's foundation. 2 weeks after the charges were filed, the interim committee met in the old HOA office, now cleared of the board's personal belongings, framed certificates, and that ridiculous fake ficus they'd used to block the security camera installation request from a year earlier. It was strange seeing the room without them, like the stage was still set but the actors had all fled. Abigail was reviewing a thick binder of property maintenance requests when she looked up at me. We've got a backlog going back 3 years. Some of these were never answered. Residents paid fees for requests that were never processed. Hold on to that, I said. We'll need it for the restitution audit. Outside the office window, a city maintenance crew was installing a new sign. Community Oversight Committee Headquarters. The city had approved a temporary designation, giving us the authority to act in place of the dissolved HOA board until formal elections could be held. It wasn't permanent, but it gave us the breathing room we needed. Ron came in carrying a box of sealed manila envelopes, each one labeled with a name and a date range. Digital forensics team dropped these off. Email archives. Everything from the past 5 years. I opened the top 1 Karens and skimmed the index. One entry caught my eye immediately. Unauthorized access to resident property March 4th, subject, surveillance evasion. Abigail leaned over, her eyebrows pulling together. That's the week your clutch lever was stolen, I read aloud. Ensure no visible identifiers, avoid camera angles. If challenged, cite Regulation 14.6 regarding unapproved fixtures. They were literally coaching each other on how to steal packages without being caught. Ron let out a low whistle. This wasn't just her. This was a whole operation. And that, I said, is what moves this from neighborhood drama to criminal conspiracy. We boxed up the email files and drove them to the county prosecutor's office. The assistant DA, a sharp-eyed woman named Chen, met us in the lobby. We've been expecting these, she said, flipping through the labels. We're expanding the indictment to include conspiracy to commit mail theft and misappropriation of community funds under municipal fraud statutes. These emails should help establish intent. What about the audit? I asked. She nodded. The forensic accountant you hired gave us everything, the phony landscaping invoices, the fake consultant, even the HOA credit card purchases at non-business locations. It's airtight. We left the office in silence. There wasn't much to say. The weight of what had happened, and what nearly continued unchecked, was finally settling in. 3 days later, subpoenas were served to 2 more former board members. One of them, Linda, tried to claim she'd been coerced, but the emails showed her actively forwarding porch camera blind spots and suggesting which residents wouldn't notice a missing parcel or two. City Council held a public hearing the following week. I stood at the podium, facing a semicircle of officials and a gallery packed with residents, reporters, and a few curious legal students from the university. Council member Ortiz, a former prosecutor herself, looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. You're saying the HOA president and multiple board members systematically stole personal property, created false documentation to cover it up, and used HOA funds for personal gain? Yes, ma'am, I said. And we've presented evidence to law enforcement, the DA's office, and now to this council. What's your recommendation? I looked around the room. Dissolve the HOA charter, reclassify the neighborhood under city governance until a new system can be established, and bar all former board members from holding any future administrative role in residential planning within city limits. There was a long pause, followed by a low murmur of approval. Council member Ortiz tapped her pen against the desk. You're not an attorney, Mr. Niles, I'm a paralegal, I said, and a resident who got tired of watching people get railroaded. She smiled faintly. You've done more legwork than some legal teams we've seen. We'll take this under advisement. The vote came 2 days later, unanimous approval. The HOA was officially dissolved. In its place, the city appointed a liaison to work with our interim committee for the next 12 months. After that, residents would decide whether to form a new association or remain under municipal oversight. That night, we held a community gathering in the park. Not a meeting, just food trucks, music, and neighbors who hadn't spoken in years finally laughing together. Kids played on the repaired swings, and the tension that had hung over the neighborhood for so long felt like it had finally lifted. I stood near the grill, flipping burgers, when Mr. Patel walked up holding a paper plate loaded with samosas. "You know," he said, "when I moved here I thought this place was perfect, quiet, clean, well kept. I didn't realize the cost of all that control." "It's not the rules," I said. "It's who holds them and what they do when no one's watching," he nodded slowly. Well, someone was watching this time. Before I could answer, Abigail waved me over to a folding table. She pointed at a thick envelope. Restitution disbursement letters. The DA's office started mailing them out this morning. Everyone who paid fraudulent fines or lost a package is getting their money back, plus damages. I picked up one of the letters and read the name, Mrs. Wu. "About time," I said. She grinned. Turns out when you confront corruption with receipts, it folds fast. A week later, I received a call from a council member's office. They wanted me to speak at a citywide workshop on HOA accountability, using our case as a model for reform. I hesitated at first. I hadn't done any of this for attention, but after thinking it over, I agreed. If our story could prevent another neighborhood from going through the same mess, it was worth it. The day of the workshop, I stood before a room full of city planners, neighborhood representatives, and legal observers. I told them everything: how it started with a missing package, how layers of corruption unraveled with each document, how the community took back control with nothing more than evidence, persistence, and a shared refusal to be silenced. When I finished, a woman from the back raised her hand. "How did you know where to start?" "I didn't," I said. "I just knew something was wrong. And I trusted that if I kept pulling the thread, the rest would come loose." After my presentation, several attendees approached me to ask about the audit process, the legal filings, and the logistics of dissolving an HOA. I gave them copies of the template. We'd created an open-source toolkit for anyone dealing with a rogue board. Back home, the neighborhood kept evolving. We installed real-time delivery lockers near the mailboxes to prevent future thefts. The community garden expanded into the lot behind the pool house. And for the first time, residents voted on every expenditure, every improvement, every change. The power wasn't in the hands of a few anymore. It belonged to all of us, and the porch where it all began. I left the Ring camera up, but now it overlooked flower boxes and a welcome bench where neighbors sometimes stopped to chat. No more missing packages. No more threats in envelopes. Just a quiet street where people looked out for one another. Justice, it turned out, didn't come from yelling the loudest. It came from showing up, doing the work, and refusing to look away. And I never did.